There's a moment in Zlatan Ibrahimovic's life when the world stopped seeing him as a footballer and began seeing him as a force of nature. It happened in Amsterdam, when a young Zlatan dribbled through an entire defense with a mixture of violence and elegance that didn't seem human. Fans gasped, commentators fell silent, and defenders stood frozen, realizing they had just witnessed something impossible. But what the world didn't see was the truth behind that moment. A boy raised in chaos, forged in poverty and driven by a rage he learned to turn into brilliance. That goal wasn't just a highlight, it was a warning. Zlatan hadn't arrived in football. He had erupted into it. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was born in Rosengård, one of Sweden's toughest immigrant neighborhoods, a place shaped by broken homes, concrete walls, and the constant pressure of survival. His father, Shefik, was a Bosnian Muslim who worked exhausting hours and drowned his loneliness in alcohol. His mother, Jurka, a Croatian cleaner, was overwhelmed by the weight of raising multiple children in a country that never fully accepted them. The household was unstable, loud, fractured. Love existed, but it was buried beneath survival. From a young age, Zlatan learned to navigate chaos. He stole bicycles to get to training. He fought bullies who mocked his name, his accent, his clothes. He grew up fast, hardened by a world that expected nothing from him. And yet inside that turbulence was a burning confidence, an inner voice telling him he was meant for more than the limits this neighborhood tried to place on him. Football became his escape. The streets became his training ground. He learned to dribble in tight corners between parked cars, to strike the ball with power born from frustration, to use his height and strength long before he knew how to control them. Coaches saw talent, yes, but they also saw anger, unpredictability, and a temper that scared them. Zlatan wasn't just playing football, he was fighting through it. The world would one day see a giant with impossible skill, but it all started with a boy trying to survive a life that gave him nothing for free. Zlatan's talent didn't appear polished. It appeared wild, untamed, and overwhelming. From the moment he joined his first youth teams in Malmö, it was clear he played by instincts no one could teach. He dribbled not with technique, but with defiance. Shoulder drops, explosive turns, unpredictable touches that left defenders guessing, and coaches both amazed and frustrated. He wasn't a model student, he wasn't obedient, but when the ball reached his feet, the entire pitch tilted toward him. As a teenager, Zlatan grew taller, stronger, sharper. His confidence, already massive, grew with him. He trash-talked older players. He refused to pass when he believed he could score. Some coaches wanted to bench him. Others saw a diamond beneath the arrogance. But all of them admitted one thing: he had something different. The turning point came during a trial with Malmö FF's senior squad. Surrounded by older, more disciplined professionals, Zlatan danced through tackles with a mix of street swagger and raw precision. In one sequence, he nutmegged a veteran, spun past another, and fired a shot into the top corner. The training session stopped. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "This kid, he's special." Zlatan didn't just impress. He demanded to be seen. From that day, Malmö knew they weren't developing a typical Swedish prospect. They were witnessing the rise of a phenomenon, a player whose belief in himself was as powerful as his talent, and destiny was about to pull him out of Rosengård and onto the world stage. Even as Zlatan climbed through Malmö's ranks, his journey was marked by setbacks that threatened to derail him. He struggled with discipline, arguing with coaches, skipping training sessions, and letting frustration boil over when things didn't go his way. Teammates found him arrogant, opponents found him infuriating, and Malmö's staff wondered whether the raw brilliance they saw was worth the chaos that came with it. Money was another problem. His family couldn't afford proper gear, and Zlatan often trained in worn-out boots or borrowed equipment. He felt the gap between himself and the players from wealthier families, players who showed up polished, supported, and confident. Every time he stepped onto the pitch, he carried more than pressure to perform. He carried the weight of proving he belonged. His first heartbreak came when Malmö FF nearly released him. They questioned his attitude, his work ethic, his volatility. Zlatan realized he was standing on the edge of losing the only thing that made him feel powerful, and instead of collapsing, he hardened. The rejection didn't break him, it sharpened him. Then came a tragedy at home that shook him deeply. His father, drowning in alcohol and exhaustion, became emotionally distant, and Zlatan felt the sting of abandonment even while living under the same roof. His mother struggled to hold the family together, and the instability he faced every night forged a storm inside him. Football wasn't a sport anymore. It was his escape route. The doubt, the financial struggle, the emotional wounds, they didn't weaken Zlatan. They built him. They created a young man who refused to be controlled, refused to be overlooked, refused to accept the life he was born into. Every setback became fuel. Every criticism became motivation. Every moment of pain became part of the fire driving him forward. Zlatan wasn't just chasing success. He was running from the life he refused to return to. Zlatan's breakthrough arrived not with a gentle rise, but with an explosion that forced the football world to pay attention. After fighting his way into Malmö FF's first team, he stepped onto the professional stage with the confidence of someone who believed destiny owed him a debt. From his earliest matches, he played with a swagger rare for a teenager, towering over defenders, twisting past them with impossible balance, and striking the ball with a violence that felt personal. The moment that truly announced his arrival came during a match where Malmö desperately needed a spark. Zlatan received the ball near the halfway line, dribbled through one defender, then another, long legs cutting through tackles like a knife through cloth, before placing the ball calmly into the net. The stadium erupted. Malmö had found their star. It didn't take long for Europe to notice. Top clubs sent scouts. Juventus watched. Arsenal watched. Ajax acted. In 2001, Ajax signed him, and Zlatan left Sweden with a reputation as a rebellious prodigy. But his early days in Amsterdam were rough. He clashed with teammates, frustrated coaches, and struggled to adapt to the tactical discipline of Dutch football. For a moment, it seemed the old doubts were resurfacing. Was he too wild, too stubborn, too raw to succeed at the highest level? Then everything changed. Under Ronald Koeman, Zlatan was given freedom, not just to play, but to be himself. The result was electric. His touch sharpened, his vision expanded, and his confidence soared to new heights. And then came that goal against Enik Breda, one of the most iconic goals of his career, where he dribbled through half a team, leaving defenders stumbling in every direction before slotting the ball home. It wasn't a goal, it was a declaration. Zlatan Ibrahimovic had arrived among Europe's elite. From that point on, he wasn't just a rising star. He was a statement of intent, a player who refused to fit the mold, refused to be controlled, refused to bow to expectations. The climb to the top had begun, and the world was about to learn that Zlatan didn't follow football's rules. He rewrote them. Zlatan's rise to the top was unlike anything European football had seen. At Ajax, he evolved from a rebellious talent into a terrifyingly complete forward, tall, powerful, graceful, unpredictable. His skill set didn't make sense on paper. A man of his size shouldn't have been able to move like that, turn like that, or manipulate a ball with such arrogance and elegance. Yet Zlatan did it routinely, as if defying physics were simply part of his job. After dominating the Eredivisie, he made the next leap to Juventus. This was no ordinary move. This was a step into the most tactical, disciplined, unforgiving league in the world. And Zlatan didn't just survive it, he flourished. He adapted quickly, learning from Fabio Capello, who sharpened his instincts and demanded consistency. At Juve, Zlatan added something new to his game, ruthlessness. But the journey was not linear. When Juventus faced scandal and relegation after the Calciopoli fallout, Zlatan refused to stay in sync with them. He moved to Inter Milan, where his evolution accelerated again. Under Roberto Mancini and later Jose Mourinho, Zlatan became a machine, scoring, assisting, dominating, intimidating. He won 3 straight Serie A titles. He became the centerpiece of the league. He played with a mixture of artistry and brutality that defenders couldn't solve. Then came Barcelona. It was the biggest move of his life. A club of legends, a system of perfection, a team built around Lionel Messi. Zlatan arrived with expectations sky high, and for a moment he delivered, scoring in big matches, overwhelming La Liga defenses, proving he could shine on the biggest stage. But Barcelona was also where Zlatan confronted the limits of fitting into a system that wasn't built for him. His relationship with Pep Guardiola collapsed. His ego clashed with Barcelona's order. His freedom of expression clashed with tactical rigidity. Zlatan didn't shrink, he roared. But roaring at Barcelona meant exile, and so the world thought he might fall. Instead, Zlatan resurrected himself again. He went to AC Milan and dominated Italy once more, carrying the club to a league title. Then came Paris, where he became the face of PSG's rise, shattering records, redefining expectations, turning League One into his personal stage. He scored volleys, back heels, 30-yard screamers, kung fu goals that became global phenomena. Every match felt like a performance. Every moment felt like proof that Zlatan wasn't aging. He was escalating. He conquered England with Manchester United next, then returned to dominate MLS simply because he wanted to. And finally, he returned to AC Milan in his late 30s and lifted a broken club back to the top of Italy, defying time itself. At his peak, Zlatan wasn't just one of the best strikers in the world. He was a force, a phenomenon, a one-man rebellion against limits. His legacy was already secure, but the darker chapters of his journey were still ahead. The moments where ego, conflict, and the weight of his own myth threatened to consume everything he had built. For all the dominance Zlatan displayed on the pitch, his journey was never free of shadows. His career, built on defiance and fueled by an unshakable ego, often collided with conflict. Coaches, teammates, journalists, and entire fan bases. Zlatan thrived on chaos, but sometimes the chaos pushed back. The first major fracture came at Barcelona. What should have been a match made in football heaven, Zlatan, in the world's most fluid attacking system, turned into one of the most infamous clashes of ego in modern football. He expected to be the star. Guardiola expected obedience. Zlatan refused to shrink. Guardiola refused to bend. Their relationship deteriorated to silence, literally. Weeks passed without a single word exchanged. Zlatan felt disrespected, muted, trapped in a system that demanded he become someone he was not. The breakup was inevitable. Leaving Barcelona bruised his pride, but it didn't break him. Yet it marked the first time the world saw cracks in the Ibrahimovic myth. Then came the controversies that followed him like a shadow. Violent red cards, clashes with teammates, public insults, altercations in training. Zlatan never backed down. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, always unapologetic. He punched, kicked, shouted, taunted. Supporters called him a leader. Critics called him a bully. But Zlatan didn't care, or at least he pretended not to. In France, the pressure ignited again. After a referee decision enraged him during a PSG match, Zlatan stormed into the tunnel and shouted that France didn't deserve PSG, a comment that exploded across the media. The backlash was immediate, and though he apologized, it painted him as ungrateful and arrogant. But the darkest chapter wasn't conflict with others. It was conflict with himself. As injuries mounted in his mid-30s, Zlatan became something he had never been before: vulnerable. His knee shattered during a Europa League match with Manchester United, and for the first time in his life, Zlatan felt true fear. The possibility that his body might finally betray the warrior mindset that had carried him since childhood. Doctors told him he might never play again. Some said walking normally was uncertain. But ego, the same force that once created chaos, now saved him. Zlatan refused to quit, refused to accept fate, refused to let the world write his ending. His recovery was grueling, silent, lonely. And for a man who lived on noise, that silence forced him to confront questions he had avoided his entire career. Who is Zlatan without football? Who is Zlatan when he cannot dominate? What remains when the roar fades? It was the closest he had ever come to breaking. And yet the same fire that nearly consumed him became the fire that rebuilt him. Greater, older, wiser, and more dangerous than ever. Zlatan's comeback wasn't just unlikely, it was almost mythic. After the devastating knee injury at Manchester United, the football world assumed his story was over. He was 35. His body was broken. His style demanded power, explosiveness, dominance, qualities no one believed he could recover. But Zlatan refused to let nature, age, or public opinion dictate his ending. He rebuilt himself with an obsession only he could sustain. Hours of rehab turned into months, months into a year. And when he finally returned, he did so not as a diminished version of his past self, but as a man reborn through pain. Instead of fading quietly, he shocked the world by choosing a new battlefield, MLS. In Los Angeles, he didn't go to retire. He went to conquer. His debut goal, a 40-yard volley that dipped, swerved, and detonated into the net, became an instant global sensation. It wasn't a goal, it was a message. Zlatan was still Zlatan, but his true final chapter began with his emotional return to AC Milan. The club was broken, drifting without identity, desperate for leadership. And Zlatan, now in his late 30s, became that leader. Not through arrogance, but through presence. He transformed a fragile dressing room into believers. He challenged young players. He inspired them. He scared them when necessary. And Milan, slowly, incredibly, rose again. Then came the miracle. At 39 years old, Zlatan led Milan to their first Scudetto in 11 years. A man who should have been retired was instead lifting a fallen giant back to glory. But beneath the triumph, Ibrahimovic privately endured constant pain. His knee was nearly destroyed. He trained without an ACL. He took injections before matches just to step onto the pitch. He didn't reveal the truth until after the title was won, because Zlatan never wanted sympathy. He wanted legacy. His final seasons weren't about goals. They were about purpose, about giving more than his body should have allowed, about showing the next generation what resilience truly looks like. Zlatan didn't end his career quietly. He ended it standing tall, defiant, and unforgettable. A warrior who refused to die before his work was done. Today, Zlatan Ibrahimovic stands not just as a football legend, but as a living monument to self-belief. He may have finally stepped away from the pitch, but his presence still fills every room he enters. At Milan, young players speak of him with reverence. At PSG, they still quote him. At Manchester United, his brief spell is remembered as a lesson in mentality. And across the world, strikers study his movement, his bravery, his unapologetic individuality. Zlatan's legacy is layered. To some, he is arrogance personified. To others, he is the pure expression of confidence forged through hardship. But to millions, he is proof that greatness has no blueprint. That a boy from a fractured immigrant home can rise not by fitting the mold, but by breaking it. His influence extends beyond football. His quotes became cultural moments. His personality shaped generations of young athletes who learned that belief in oneself is a weapon. And his journey, marked by rejection, conflict, reinvention, and impossible comebacks, stands as one of the most extraordinary careers the sport has ever seen. He didn't just play for trophies. He played to conquer doubt, his own and everyone else's. And he leaves behind a path paved with audacity, success, controversy, reinvention, and stories no one else could ever live. Zlatan Ibrahimovic didn't retire as a man. He retired as a myth, a reminder that limits exist only for those who accept them. In the end, his legacy is simple. You don't become Zlatan, you survive life and create him.